Good morning. An East Lothian curling history, 5 centuries of the roaring game. This presentation is based on written history I started to put together some years ago. It covers 2 parts, one the early years before 1838 and club curling from that year in part 2. Slide 2. This is an adapted map of East Lothian today. It includes Mossaborough, which became part of East Lothian in 1975. The East Lothian province area is based on the old county of East Lothian and was once named Addingtonshire. The city of Edinburgh in the former county of Mid Lothian lies to the west. The county of Berwickshire lies to the south. This slide, number 3, shows the Jubilee curling stone. It belonged to the Dunglass and Covensparth Curling Club, which was formed in 1831. It was presented on loan to the Royal Caledonian Curling Club in 1888, its Jubilee year, and is now held by them in store. It would not be accepted as a curling stone played under the current rules. It's too heavy. From memory, it weighs over 100 pounds. But it still raises the question of why people join curling clubs and what is the attraction of a winter sport based on a 44 pound, 19.96 kilograms, round lump of granite thrown over a sheet of ice for a minimum distance of 72 feet, 21.95 metres. The organised game of curling in the old county of Addingtonshire lacked any curling club before 1831. By 1900 it had 20 active curling clubs and at least 500 curlers. Today it has 8 clubs. This photograph shows an informal game on Markel Loch near East Linton. It led to the creation of the Markel Outdoor Curling Society, which was formed in 2000. A 20-year study of the evolution of organised curling in the former county of East Lothian has now been completed. It reveals differences in how clubs were established, assesses club records were available, considers how clubs were managed successfully, analyses examples of dysfunction, and how they coped with the vagacious nature of a winter sport that only became an indoor sport in Edinburgh in 1912. The earliest record of the game of curling in Scotland is found on the account of 16th February 1540/41 by a John McQuinn, a notary in Paisley. It involved a challenge by a John Sclater, a monk in Paisley Abbey, to a Gavin Hamilton for a contest with stones thrown over the ice. Research on the possibility of the game originating in the Low Countries, particularly Holland, where the Dutch still play their game of kriebelspel using wooden discs, was undertaken by the Reverend John Ramsay in 1811, although the findings of the continental origins have since been questioned. Curling matches at the Winter Olympics demonstrate how the sport has now an international status. In March 2023, a friend in America sent me an article about a curling club at the University of Toledo in the state of Ohio. It told a story of a new curling club formed in the fall of 2021 as they prepared to take on a nationally ranked curling team from the oldest and the largest curling club in the USA. It was about a year ago that the University of Toledo Curling Club took to the ice for the first ever competitive match. The months-old club had about a dozen members, most of whom had never played the game until they joined the team in 2021. And they were going against a nationally ranked team, the oldest and largest curling club in the USA. Megan Harper, the team secretary, was like most of the members. She had never touched a curling broom or participated in a local bonspiel. I didn't know how to get started. I was really bad at the beginning, but I was determined to figure it out, she said, and added, it took me until my second bonspiel that I was comfortable and confident in my abilities. Now, with 18 members, the team is ranked 16th in the nation and will host this year's College National Championship. It is an example of the enthusiasm that is essential to the sport. The two old curling stones on this slide have a link to the East Linton area. I applied to join East Linton Curling Club along with my wife Audrey around 1980 after moving to East Linton. It was one of the original clubs. Curling offered us a winter sport, which for me avoided a pollen allergy. There was a waiting list. The club members were mainly local inhabitants and included members of the local farming community who had been involved with the reconstituted East Linton Club formed in 1968. At that time, the membership of the Royal Caledonian Club, the governing body formed in 1838, was based on affiliated clubs. I remember attending an AGM in Paisley about 1990. The stage of the hall was occupied by men in blue blazers who were involved in the management of the game of curling and had represented the Royal Club at an international level. Status was clearly important. It was not until 2002 that the constitution was changed for the Royal Club to be managed by the individual members of the organisation rather than the club delegates, and even later, before a woman held the position of President of the Royal Club. My discovery also fitted with the evidence found by the late Sheriff David Smith, which is detailed in this next slide. It is one of the few written references to curling in the city in that period, and indicates a curling network of Sir John and his significant friends. The link with curling at Dromore was through the Dalrymple family, the estate belonging to Lord Dromore, a judge in the Court of Session. One of the most significant events in the development of curling as a sport in East Lothian was the arrival of the Reverend John Ramsay as minister to the congregation of Gladsmuir Church in December 1832. He was a keen curler. He had joined Duddingston Curling Society in December 1808. A book entitled An Account of the Game of Curling, published anonymously in 1811, included the Duddingston Society rules and has since been credited to him. The rules were later adopted by the Grand Caledonian Curling Club when it was formed in 1838. The main rules are still operating today, not just in Scotland, but wherever the game is played, using the rules of the modern game. He also had an interest in artificial rinks, yet few knew of him in East Lothian, his home for 65 years. Slide 9. Gladsmuir Kirk. 2 years after becoming Minister of Gladsmuir, John Ramsay was involved in setting up the Gladsmuir Club. In 1884, a later historian, the Reverend John Kerr, Minister of Dirleton, wrote, "If any brother curler has a day to spare, he will find it refreshing to visit this beautiful spot where our historian is laid, and to read the simple inscription on the marble slab above his grave." This is the memorial to John Ramsay. Unfortunately, it does not refer to his curling history. Slide 11. This recommendation was followed in January 2009 when 4 curlers, 2 representing East Lothian and 2 of the Canadian curling team, then touring Scotland, laid a wreath at Ramsay's grave in Gladsmuir Kirkyard. When the proposed visit to Ramsay's grave was arranged, it was clear that his connection with the history of curling was not well known. Unfortunately, he was to experience bitter conflict within the Kirk session and the congregation, and some of the committee members of the new curling club. Slide 12. This slide shows some of the men of Gladsmuir John Ramsay had to work with when he arrived in Gladsmuir Kirk. He had a difficult time in the early days. Did he upset the local estate factor at Penston by criticising the living conditions of the inhabitants? In 2015, I published 2 articles on his life, one which analysed the power struggle between the curling committee members and the link to disputes in the Gladsmuir Kirk session. The other to correct unfounded criticism of his actions in the dispute over the use of the well at his manse. Slide 13. By the start of the 20th century, Gladsmuir Curling Club was again to be significant in the development of Scottish curling. William Gemmell was a farmer near Gladsmuir. He represented East Lothian on the RCCC committee and was a vice president in 1902-3. One of his tasks was to select curlers from Scotland to visit Canada in 1902. Slide 14. The contribution of John Ramsay and the conflict he experienced from a club that initially seemed more interested in dining is in contrast to the contribution of Sir David Baird of New Baith. This is a record of his army service. He had attended the first meeting to discuss setting up a Scottish curling club as a member of the East London Club in May 1838. The notice of that first meeting had been printed by a John Allen of Haddington, but the person who set up the meeting was never identified. The fuller research reports on the formation of the Grand Curling Club in 1838 discloses the absence of any reference in the minutes of the role of Sir David in the formation of the East London Club. The club minutes record the first president as an Andrew Howden, but the details of club membership were already recorded in the New Caledonian Curling Club Annual. It is similar to the story of John Ramsay and his conflict with Gladsmuir Curling Club. Sir David became the 3rd president of the New Grand Caledonian Club, later to become the Royal Caledonian Curling Club. End of part 1.